Hi. Excellent. I'm really glad that we are here tonight. So my name is Prune Harris, and I am excited to talk to you tonight about how to help our young generation who are working with anxiety. Anxiety is a really massive epidemic in our young people at the moment. So I'm going to allow some people to come on. So let's just wait and I'll have a cup of tea while some of you are coming in right now. Emma, I see you there. Hi. Yeah, I'm really excited to. Claire, I see you. Hi, Claire. I'm really excited to talk about this tonight because it's a really massive issue for so many people in our entire communities. But with the children who are working with anxiety, I really want to share some energetic insights and some ways to help them. And so really ask your questions as well. You come in, let me fine tune what I'm saying by answering your questions, because that's a way that's very powerful for us to find the answers that can help all of our children. Hi, Katie. Hi, Heather. It's so great. Hi, Celia. Hi, Dylan. Awesome. So let's start with looking at anxiety and the way it can show up for our children and what's happening energetically there. Because right now there are huge demands on our young people, demands from social media, demands from screen time, demands from the sheer intensity of the schooling system, and also the intensity of the social energy that's around at the moment. Obviously, that involves social media, but just the intensity of how kids have to navigate the world nowadays is very, very different. I'm in my mid-40s. Many of you will be of that generation. But even if you're in your 30s, you still are navigating a world that's totally different from the one that our children have inherited. So we don't really have the understanding of what it's like right now as young people. We can empathize, we can imagine what it's like. But actually, what I'm seeing in your young children nowadays is an added intensity in their energy systems. And I guess I'm mostly talking here about people from tiny, so right now, if we're looking at 2019, then I'm talking about from age 2 or 3 up to age, let's cap it at 20. Now, of course, there are artificial boundaries, but that broad spectrum of up to the older teenagers, and from the time when that young child begins to step out of the direct protection of their mum or dad's energy field. So that's generally about age 2. So if I'm talking about anxiety in young people, that's a spectrum I'm really talking about. And obviously it shows up very differently for the older young people as opposed to the younger ones. But there are some constants, and one of those is an added intensity into the energy system. And I think a lot of that is the way in which so many children don't get downtime. They don't get time to be bored. They don't get rest time. They don't get those transition times between activities. That would have been something that would have been very normal for many of us growing up, but that was before the real internet age. And what happens then in their energy system is they don't get a chance to reset. So often with children, energy rises quite quickly. It can rise in spontaneity, in fun, in enjoyment, in expression. So this energy rises. It can also rise in panic or insecurity, feelings of fear. All of that rises up as well. And whereas in adults, we're quite used to this energy rising and then settling, rising and settling. With children, it tends to move much, much quicker. So it means that ability to go up, up, up stays there. And so it needs the downtime to actually remember to come back down into the whole body system. That needs time and space, and that's what children aren't getting a lot of at the moment. The other factor is that many adults work with anxiety or are holding a lot of stress. So these young people who are moving around our worlds, they see modeled continual stress, continual anxiety or pressure or tension. And often then that's released by adults through zoning out, watching the television for hours and hours, or drinking, or some other addiction that comes in. It might be addiction to running or exercise. It doesn't have to be something that we judge as a non-healthy addiction, but what isn't being modeled is balance. And so these young people, not only are they working with increased pressures, but often they're not having balance modeled back to that. So that becomes a tension in itself for the younger generation. They really begin to carry the burden of the older generations. And that's why I feel it's really, really important that we talk today about how we, as the caretakers of these young people, have to play a really vital role in actually balancing out our own energy when we're around a younger person who's working with anxiety. Hi, hi, hi. I see lots of people coming in. Nicola and Sylvie, Serena, Hilda, Jyotish, Wani, Vicky, wonderful. Miriam, I see you there as well. I'm really delighted that we're all here tonight. So one of the things that's really important is settling the energy system of an anxious child, which really means being very mindful of your own energy system. Nothing settles anxiety quicker than safety and trust in that safety. So if there is a young person who I'm looking after or I'm caring for or I'm engaging with, if I can pay close attention to how grounded my own energy system is, then that will begin to stabilize the energy system of the young person with me. And that's really, really powerful understandings, because so often when we have a young person who's anxious in our life, then actually we feel that anxiety for them as well. We feel grief or care, love, anxious, fear for them. We wonder what we've done that actually might have upset their anxiety or upset their balance. And so we then create a system, we hold patterns in our energy field, which also begins to impact and increase the lack of safety and anxiety in that young person's field. And that's an interesting thing to sit with and feel into. There can be increased guilt associated with that. And that, of course, makes your field less stable for that young person to be around. Or there can be an acceptance that actually you have the power to increase the depth, the resiliency, the groundedness of your system. And in doing so, it's like you imagine a tree. So if I'm a tree and I've got really, really deep roots, a great big cradle underneath me for meters of my rootedness, my groundedness, my stability, then that little sapling that's growing beside me can sink deep into those roots and really feel safe, can draw on the resiliency of my rootedness. And that's one of the most important things if you have a child who you know is working with anxiety in your life. Then you providing that stability, that groundedness. It's not going to be perfect. There's going to be times when you don't feel particularly grounded, when you don't feel particularly strong in your own foundation. But when you're with that person, that young person who's working with anxiety, then really consciously dropping down into the depths, into your roots, into your groundedness. Now, with groundedness, I've written a lot about it on the blogs on my website, pruneharris.com, and on my YouTube channel. There's also a lot of videos that talk about groundedness. So if you're unclear about what that means, then really I encourage you to go and research there, because our energy systems are designed to be fully rooted, fully connected into the earth beneath us and everything that's above us. We really are not dotting around in isolated energy blobs. We're part of a very, very rooted, safe, amazing, expansive universe. And when we can take our place more and more fully in that way, then we help the younger generation, both individually, those people that we know, but also on a collective level. Because what I've observed in a lot of young people right now is that they're holding a collective anxiety, which means that it's not particularly personal. That's a big understanding to hold, that maybe your son, your daughter is working with anxiety because they're picking up on a field of anxiety. They're picking up on a field of lack of safety. And that started, I started really noticing that in children about 20 years ago. And it seemed at that point to be very associated with the environmental situation. There was a lot of talk and there was a lot of projection from my generation and the older generation that actually this is something that our kids are going to sort out for us. Yeah, this is something where we've kind of messed things up a bit environmentally, but don't worry, the younger generation, they're great, they're smart, they've got technology, they're going to sort it out. So really we just dumped our blame and we gave it to a younger generation as a vast collective energy. And that's a really heavy burden. And that's not to say that there aren't plenty across all generations that really are making a vast environmental difference right now. But there was something that got passed. We passed the buck there, and that's a really heavy place for young people to inherit. And of course, now there's all kinds of other, and I'm not going to go into them, but there's all kinds of other pressures politically, economically, globally. The pressures are rising. And our younger generation, you know, even as little tiny tots, they are hardwired to read safety. Yeah, you think of even the tiniest monkey you can imagine that's clinging onto its mother, that actually is already figuring out in its tiny little systems what is safe and what is not safe. Well, we're no different. We are that little monkey, yeah? When our children are all the time reading safety habits, ways of interacting that provides that safety, that nourishment. So there's a lot that young people have to process, and what is needing to be processed is increasing all the time. So no surprise that our young people are often lifting out of their roots, lifting out of their strengths, and becoming more vulnerable within that space, which shows up in anxiety. The other thing that's really important, and is an important difference in how a lot of young people are right now, is that they are incredibly empathic, that they're super tuned into everyone around them, what's happening in the planet, what's happening in the solar system. And so they're picking up energies that really aren't theirs. And often they don't know how to process that either. So that's a lot to say. That's a lot to say when I've got a hot cup of tea. So one thing that's important, the takeaway from all of that, because actually I could go on and on and on. I could go on sharing some of the understandings as why young people's systems aren't adapting particularly well to the increased stress that everybody's experiencing. But what I want to give you is some of the ways that you can work to affect that. And the biggest takeaway of all of that is you being grounded, you being in your stability. When you're around your children, your young person who you know is working with anxiety, is one of the biggest ways to deeply start helping their system, because that energy is absorbable. They can actually begin to absorb your stability, your safety, your strength. And that doesn't mean they take it away from you, but that the information in your energy field that everything's okay, that despite these pressures, hey, life's amazing. It's delightful to be alive. When they can start interpreting that in your energy field, then that becomes part of what they're also holding in their own. All right, let's see if we have any questions that I can work with here. So Peter, you're mentioning about bullies. Absolutely. Absolutely. But you know what? I totally agree with you. I totally agree that there's cyberbullying that can happen in your own room now. Yeah. Our generation, though, perhaps there were bullies at school or waiting on the street corner. But once you're in your house, those external bullies or bullies outside the family couldn't get to you in any way. Well, now, of course, they're there at every moment if you have your phone with you. But one of the most damaging people that bully you is you. Yeah, the words you say to yourself. We can be the most vicious with ourselves. And so I absolutely agree that those external influences are intrusive. But actually, with people who work a lot with anxiety, it's the internal influences that are even more intrusive because, of course, they truly are with you at every moment of the day. So Katie, let's have a look. Your 16-year-old niece has huge anxiety around food. She's just been diagnosed as celiac and suffers pain on eating. She's developing anorexia. How can we help? She's very underweight. She hates eating even gluten-free food. Yeah, and actually that's one of the ways that often anxiety is going to show up in young women and men, more women at that point. But definitely anorexia is a factor for men as well. So issues with food, self-harming, incredibly on the increase at the moment with the young generation. Addictions to various things, those are going to be big ways. So let's think about that one with food. One of the big challenges when there's an issue like food is that as adults, we tend to make it even more of an issue. So then there's pressure about eating, and that can be deeply challenging. So one way I would sort of work to move around that with a young person who's really, really struggling with food, obviously modeling being healthy and resilient in whatever ways you can, but really working with supporting the identity of that young person, totally separate of food. Yeah, there is already an issue around food, so to bring more of an issue, it is going to be a greater challenge. But to work on supporting the identity that actually is generally when people are working with food issues, their identity of themselves has crumbled. So then how do you rebuild that identity? And of course, there's very much a place for medical intervention at that point as well, depending how bad it is. So it's a place where energy, the biomedical understandings, and great care from the community, from your family is also so important. So Katie, it's almost too big of an issue of a question for me to answer directly here. Ways I would be working with it, if that 16-year-old was open to it, would be having lots of fun, yeah, getting away from phones, any family members that individual found a pressure, getting that child in nature a lot, which of course many children at age 16 aren't interested in, but finding ways to nourish that child's sense of herself, or this young woman at 16, she's no longer a child, but to nourish her sense of herself. And almost food just becomes an extra little piece to add into that nourishment. As far as energy techniques there, then I would do things like bless the food. It's very, very simple, but if she can begin to be in a healthy engagement with her food, blessing it, saying thank you to it, even if it's only the 1 or 2 mouthfuls that she'll eat, then that's a way that she can begin to understand that there's something that is sacred or powerful about that food that's outside her identity to it. Yeah, there's a lot more to say there, but it's such a complex issue that at this point, I think I'm going to leave that one there. Serena, you're saying your 8-year-old is completely aware of how damaging Trump is and knows who the new candidates are. Yeah, an 8-year-old, absolutely. It's sad but impossible to shelter her so that she doesn't know what's going on. I also think it empowers her, though. Yeah, it really is that big, big place, isn't it? I mean, for me, children will know, even if we think they don't know. So we have an 8-year-old here who is fully aware of, at whatever level, aware of the political situation. Politics is something that's openly discussed. It's on the news. There's cartoons, there's pictures. You can't walk down a high street without picking up some of that knowledge. So, as you say, empowering and great to share information. And at the same time, it can be totally overwhelming in the place that when that little one hears mum or dad or brothers, sisters, aunties, uncles, teachers talking about a challenge as big as the political system, then what they're reading, like children pick up not so much on what is being said on, but all of the nuances around it and behind it. So actually what they hear is anger, frustration, sadness, defense, whatever it is, whatever viewpoint is being supported, they hear the passion and they feel the energy within that. They don't necessarily understand all of the players or the structures. So it's a question of where is the safety in that information? And if that information is a small part of the life and then there's 3 hours of going on a bike ride and having a picnic, or going to a best friend's house and messing around on the television and various other things, whatever they like to do, then actually that place of adult responsibility of understanding the political system becomes a tiny part in the big day, and they retain their resiliency around it. So really balancing consciously what that child is absorbing continually through what's around us, and how they fit that into their framework of their day. Hi, Emma. You're saying my son is definitely super empathic and he feels most anxious at bedtime. Often it's anticipatory anxiety and processing everything he's taken in every day. Is there a good exercise we can do at that time of day to help him break the cycle and feel peaceful? You know, Emma, one of the really, really great things at that time of day, as he's kind of settling into bed, is to look at the things that he loved about the day, the things that he feels grateful for about the day. And that it begins to set up different hormonal and chemical energy in the body. So actually at that point, if he can be thinking of, what was I grateful for today? Well, I was grateful for the lovely food I ate with mum, or the chat I had with the cat, or. So if he can say it, and if you can say it, model it, say, okay, so before I go to bed, I'm going to talk about what I'm grateful for. And it can become a game and a silly engagement and fun with each other. But actually, it's really in a deep, deep way reminding the depth of the system, of the joy, of the experiencing that's happened that day. So over time, it begins to reset that, all right, I'm going to bed. What's tomorrow bringing? What's the anxiety response kicking in already about for tomorrow? Now, you can also, if it really depends, energy work with children can often be a curse rather than a blessing, and then something that that young person sets against. And now there's an issue between you and them about whether they should be doing energy work. So if a child invites it or is open to it, then you can have them working with gratitude while you hold the main neurovasculars, or even one of the ways I really find children love working and find it very powerful is working with the fingers. So for something like anxiety, I would be working, literally have one hand around the other thumb. This is an earth element energy. It really relates to stomach, to the big grounding meridian, to the meridian that works with trust or anxiety when it flips up. So you can literally have, in this case, your son, Emma, have him holding his thumb while he thinks about the things he's been grateful for that day, and make it as big as he wants to go, which means he might be saying he feels grateful for the air he's breathed that day. It can be tiny. It can be grateful for the fact that he had a big box of chocolate. Yeah, it can be really small and detailed. It can be really, really big. And a lot of that will depend on the imagination of the child. Both thumbs are great. Just one even. Children's energy systems respond really fast. So whereas with an adult, we might really pay attention and hold this for 3 minutes and hold this for 3 minutes, with a child, if the big earth grounding, stabilizing factor kicks in within 1 minute of holding one thumb, then it's done. So that would be something that would be interesting for you to explore there. Let's see if there's anything else that really comes to mind at bedtime. Yeah, the other one I would say in that situation, and again, it only works if the child's open to working with it, yeah? But in that situation, and I think this would be for a slightly older child, so someone perhaps who is 8, 9, 10, that kind of age up, that if they know that they're anxious about the next day, it might be that you explain to them that anxiety comes about when their energy system raises up, and they'll totally get that, because every single one of us has experienced that tightening in the chest, or the constriction in the neck or the throat, the tension that builds in the eyes when we feel that anxiety. So you can say that that's what happens energetically. Their system all comes up into this area, and to help them feel good, to help them sleep well, to help them really just relax after the intensity of the day, then they can breathe in, bring the hands up to the face, and as they breathe out, then just smooth all the way down the top part of the body. And they can have their palms facing towards them. They can have their palms facing the ground, whatever feels good to them. If they're lying in bed, they'll probably feel it more fully if their palms are facing. But again, offer them both ways of working. Kids know very, very instinctively what works for them or not. So you smooth that all the way down. They would smooth it all the way down. The chest, the abdomen, just come into a natural place where it's easy for them to stop. So if they were sitting down, they might go all the way down to the ground and touch the top of the foot. If they're lying in bed, they might just come down to the thighs and place their hands on the thighs. But that's a really powerful way to begin to reprogram that stress response that can kick in when they're coming to the end of the day. Okay. Hi, Vicky. I see you asking what ages are you considering the young generation. So I just mentioned earlier that it's kind of, I'm talking about between age 2 and age 20. Yeah, generalizations, but that kind of age. All right. Yeah, thanks, Katie. You answered that already. So Wani, you're asking, what if the mother is very anxious and worried? What can the other members of the family do to create that feeling of safety? Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I have seen it in many families where children hold anxiety themselves and no other person in the family does. So the mum, the dad, both great, grounded, they don't have to work with anxiety. So I have seen that. Far more common is that when a child is working with anxiety, it's already within the family energy. Either one of the parents or both of the parents or grandparents are holding that anxiety. And that's a very, very honest transference. That's simply an energy pattern that is being worked through within the family field. So no blame about that one. Nobody chooses anxiety. It's not like someday one person wakes up and say, hey, I think I'm going to be a really anxious person. That's what I choose for in my life. It's not conscious. It's not a choice. It's a choice to do something about that, to work with that consciously, energetically, to figure out how to evolve that. Every single experiencing we have, if it's a pattern of limitation, we can transform that. We can evolve that back into a pattern of health. So once you have identified that you're working with anxiety, there are many, many, many choices. But it's not always a choice to be that anxious person or not. So if there is a situation where, as you're saying, Wani, the mum is anxious and the child is now working with anxiety, then there are lots of ways that we can work to bring more security in. One, be very present for that child, which might mean having dinner at the house more often, or inviting the child to your house if, let's say, it's a niece or a nephew of yours or a young cousin. So be an active and present part in that young person's life, so that all the time they're on all levels of their consciousness and their energy, energy are fields of consciousness, at all levels, they're getting the understanding that, there are other people in my life that feel anxious the same as I, and there are other people in my life who they don't seem to be anxious. That's interesting, yeah? So again, you begin to feed the programming in the system that says there are other ways, there are other options. And if you are holding your energy field strong, grounded, resilient, everything that we've been talking about, then actually that young person can really begin to stabilize their field around that. Okay. Yeah, Gio, you're saying you struggle to not become anxious about the whole screen culture, the pressure on young people to be online a lot. I know, it's ironic, isn't it? Anxiety about what creates anxiety. Totally, I get you. And at the same time, I do feel like the children that are really around today, this younger generation that we're talking about, they are going to be showing us the way. We can hold huge space for their wholeness, for their balance, for their harmony. And yet the world that they're living in is unknown to us. Yeah, we do not know that world as a young person. So actually, for my own children, I made the choice several years ago that I would be guided by them. If they were continuing to move in and out of balance, with more balance than less, yeah? So as long as the scales were more in balance for them, then actually I had to follow them. I had to be led by their navigating this new world. I couldn't lead them. And in a way, that's a flip on its head from the traditional role of parenting, isn't it? Traditionally, we feel, okay, I'm the parent, I kind of understand how to navigate this world, and I will therefore guide my child through it. But in many, many ways right now, we don't have the skills. So therefore, I see it more like my child is leading the way through those new worlds, but I'm right beside them or right behind them, offering that huge grounded support so it can pull them back when they're getting unbalanced in them, and keep holding them in their strength as they're figuring things out. We really can trust this younger generation. They are amazing, amazing wise beings, most of them. Vast majority of them are carrying huge wisdom and a really strong light. When I look at the children that are walking today, they shine so brightly, and in a lot of ways that's one of the reasons for their anxiety, because they have the tendency to lift up and shine bright high. Does that make sense? Get me to say it differently if it doesn't make sense, but they have a light that shines strongly and brightly, which means that it's not always going to be the most grounded, yeah? So as older generation, our role is to provide the stability, the security. Their role is to shine through that. Okay. Let's have a look. So a 5-year-old who feels anxious separating from his dad when I go to kindergarten. Anxious separating when he needs to go to kindergarten. He sucks his thumb and plays with his hair a lot. How can we help him? So 5 is a really fascinating time, eh? 5 is when they fully, up until age 2-ish, your energy field, so your name is Noor, so Noor, your energy field would entirely have been wrapped around your son's energy field. At age 2, that starts to lessen because his energy field is needing some more independence from that. So now, although he'll carry the imprint of your energy field and his dad's energy field in him, he's now going to become much more independent. And that goes up till age 7. From age 7, another big growth happens within the energy field. So 5 is that movement towards really beginning to figure things out for the first time more on his own independent field. So sucking his thumb, playing with his hair, at the moment, those are the strategies that he's using to keep himself safe. And that's fine. If underneath it, you're really providing that big, deep support, you're giving lots of playtime, lots of downtime, time when there's laughter, time when there's rest. A lot of, with a 5-year-old, hopefully there's lots of downtime and rest in there, but especially as young people begin to get older, 7, 8, 9, 10, and into teenage years, then their need for rest is greater and greater. And by rest, what I mean, it might be sitting on a sofa and doing nothing for 10 minutes, lying on the grass, being in their room, but doing nothing. That's the key thing, the doing nothing, not being on the screen, not chatting to a friend on the phone. Music can help rest. So listening to music can be really supportive to the whole system there. But at 5, I'm trusting and hoping that he gets good playtime and quiet time. One of the things that feels important is for kids to be able to really get bored. Boredom is amazing for the creativity and the deep grounding in the energy system. Yeah, it's kind of ironic, isn't it? I'm sure there's a understanding that we shouldn't be bored, but actually I think boredom is an immense gift to the whole body system. When we're bored as a young person, and I don't mean for days and days and days, or bored because of any lack of stimulus, but if we just get those times where we are able to say, kind of a bit bored now. At that time, there's so much that shuffles and resets around the heart field especially. So it drops the energy system back down into a place where it can get creative, it can get connected again. So yeah, I thoroughly encourage boredom for kids. Let's have a look. So I'm going to wrap it up now. Emma, you're saying you totally love the way it's so easy being completely in the moment 100% and connect with nature and simplicity. They are most definitely our wise teachers. Absolutely. I mean, it's such a beautiful, beautiful way that with so many of these children who have a lot of sensitivity, it means that their ability to connect to other people, other things, animals. I mean, animals are the greatest gift for anxious children. And fish don't really count as far as being good necessary for anxiety for most children. When I'm talking about animals, it's something that they can actually touch, something that can be on their lap, or that they can be in a field with, or can just be around. Animal energy is deeply, deeply grounding, and it filters. You watch when a child is with an animal, then the animal offers help, and the child's energy system just filters stress out of it and out of their body. So animals are one of the biggest gifts for children that are working with anxiety. And as you say, Anna, being out in nature, being with trees, kicking a ball around, lying on the ground, amazing, amazing ways to reset. Okay, I'm feeling like we need to wrap this up. But thank you so much for all of your questions and really great ways to explore how to help this amazing generation that has come in behind us and working with a lot of our anxieties as well. Thanks so much for being here. Bye-bye.